Hello, T3. Have you guys had a good weekend?
Yeah.
I have so enjoyed being with you. The singing has been amazing. Wasn't Daniel Parrish amazing? I actually got to be with Daniel a few weeks ago in Conway, and I saw some of those tricks then, and I thought, this time, I'm going to figure them out. I did not figure them out. They were amazing, amazing. But guys, listen, I've told you 3 times now that I love you, and I'm going to tell you one last time, I love you. Guys, listen, thank you.
We love you.
And I appreciate that. But guys, listen. I know that I don't know you, but I know you. And I know that there are those of you that are going through some really, really hard times right now. And you're really struggling with your faith, with your life, with your family, with your friends. I don't know what all is going on, and there's a good chance that for some of you, nobody really knows what's going on in your life. And before I say anything else tonight, I just want to encourage you to let yourself be loved. Let yourself be loved by Jesus, and let yourself be loved by the people here. Open up and share with somebody. You don't have to share with everybody. That would be great if you did, but share with somebody what's going on. If you're carrying a heavy burden, because it's possible that you may even wonder if you will be loved, if you will be accepted. And I want to guarantee you that God's people are better at loving you than you might think. Let them love you. Let the Lord love you. We keep using that word love, and we talk about love a lot as Christians. And as you think about the people, not only that love you, but also the people that you're supposed to love, let me ask you this question. I know you have to be brutally honest to answer this one, but are there people in your life, you can raise your hand on this if you want to, but are there people in your life that are kind of hard to love? Yeah? People in your life that are kind of hard to love? Okay? Those of you that aren't raising your hands, maybe somebody else is raising their hands about you, but maybe not, I don't know. But chances are, if you haven't already had people in your life that are kind of hard to love, you will have people in your life that are kind of hard to love. People that you know you're supposed to love, maybe because they're related to you, or maybe just because they're in your life and you know you're supposed to love them, but they're hard to get along with, or they're kind of annoying, or they expect things of you that you don't want to give, or whatever. Some people are hard to love, but I think maybe it would help us to love people better if we had a little bit better understanding of what love is. Because I think that what we think love is like a super like. You know what I mean? Like a super like. Like you say, well, I like McDonald's, but I love Chick-fil-A, right?
Yeah.
I like this, but I love that. I like this person, but I love that person. That's not what love is. That's not what love is. In fact, here's something I want us to repeat several times tonight, but it goes like this. Love is something we do more than something we feel. So say that with me. Love is something we do more than something we feel. I want you to think about that. Because when we read about love in the Bible, when we read about the love that Jesus has for his people, when we read about the commandment that Jesus gives to people just like you, to love others, to love your brothers and sisters in Christ, to love your parents, to love your siblings, to love your neighbors, to love your enemies, it's not about a warm, fuzzy feeling in your heart. I mean, I like that warm, fuzzy feeling. I have that warm, fuzzy feeling about Chick-fil-A. I really do. I love Chick-fil-A.
But
love is something we Love is something we
Do.
more than something we
Feel.
It's not just about a warm, fuzzy feeling in your heart, because sometimes, guys, you won't have that warm, fuzzy feeling in your heart. Sometimes there's going to be people in your life that are really hard to get along with. Do you suppose that Jesus always had a warm, fuzzy feeling in his heart for his disciples even? Do you suppose that when the people that hated Jesus and were screaming, "Crucify him," and the Romans that nailed nails into his hands and to his feet and lifted him up on a cross to die, and people that walked by and hurled insults at him, do you suppose he had a warm, fuzzy feeling in his heart towards those people? Did he have a super like towards them? But did he love them? He loved them. He loved them so much that he was willing to give his life for them. Because again, love is something we
Do.
more than something we
Feel.
It's about what we do. It's about what we do. I want us to think about a story in John chapter 13. This is right before Jesus is crucified. It's the night that he is betrayed, and he's having this Last Supper. Maybe you've heard this story before. Maybe you've even seen the painting of the Last Supper, or you've even thought about the Lord's Supper as we take the Lord's Supper every week. But this night, Jesus is gathered together with his disciples. And he knows what's going to happen. In fact, that's the way John records it. It says in John 13 and verse 1, "Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew what was coming. When Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And during supper, when the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper." I just kind of want you to picture in your head what's going on here. Jesus is gathered together and he's eating this supper with his disciples. And he knows what's going to happen. He knows that Judas Iscariot has already made a plan to betray him, to sell him out. He knows that Peter, you remember Peter? Peter who said, I will never deny you. I'm with you to the end, Jesus. He knows that Peter is going to deny knowing him. Peter is even going to swear and cuss and say, "I don't know that man." And Jesus knows he's going to do that. Jesus knows that every one of his disciples, these people that he's eating supper with, these people that are saying, "I'm with you to the end, Jesus. We are your best friends. We love you. We believe in you," they're all going to take off and abandon him. He knows that's coming. He knows. He knows who they are. He knows them better than they know themselves. And he laid aside his outer garment, and taking a towel, he tied it around his waist. Now, you may know what he's about to do. And he's about to go person by person and wash their feet. And I just want you to think what it would be like to be Jesus in that moment. Picture being there at that supper, laying around the table with these disciples. And picture being Jesus and what Jesus knows and what Jesus sees as he goes person by person, and he knows what these men are about to do. Would it be hard to love people like that? Would it be hard to love people that you knew were going to betray you? Have you ever been betrayed? Have you ever had a friend that talked bad about you? Have you ever had a friend that you thought that you could trust them and then they really just stabbed you in the back? Is it hard to love people like that? Jesus knows that every single one of these men are going to abandon him, deny him, and even betray him. And I wonder, as he goes around the table, if the visions, if the future is flashing in his mind of what these men are about to do. But he ties a towel around his waist. It says in verse 5, then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. And I want you to imagine, again, being there. And maybe it's hard for you to imagine Jesus washing your feet. So imagine somebody that you have a huge amount of respect for. Maybe a teacher that you really like. Maybe a Bible class teacher that you've really enjoyed over the years. Maybe an elder where you go to church. Maybe your grandfather. Maybe your dad. Maybe the principal at your school. I don't know. Maybe somebody that you have a huge amount of respect for. Somebody who's very dignified, who's always been kind and wonderful and just a sweet, great, smart, wise person that you have so much respect for. And imagine if you had said something about that person. You'd said something that you probably shouldn't have said. You talked bad about them. You'd gossiped about them. And then the next time you saw him, you thought, I hope he doesn't know what I said. It would break my heart if he knew what I said about him, how I had gossiped about him, how I had laughed about him, how I'd done this thing, that if he knew that, it would break his heart. Now imagine that person that you have so much respect for and that you really haven't been as faithful to as you should be. That person, right now, imagine, takes off your dirty, smelly tennis shoe and peels off your sweaty socks and washes your feet. Can you imagine how you would feel embarrassed, unworthy, humiliated, wondering, does he know? Does he know how unworthy I am? Does he know how unfaithful I've been? Does he know what I said about him? And you see, Jesus knows. He knows these men, and he's washing their dirty, smelly feet, and he knows them better than they know themselves. And if you had been there at that dinner that night, do you know what Jesus would have done with your feet? He would have washed them. And he knows. He knows you as well. He knows what you did last week. He knows what you said and you shouldn't have said. He knows what you've looked at. He knows what you've listened to. He knows who you've been with. He knows all of that. He knows all of it. And sometimes if we're honest, guys, we don't really want people to know us, do we? We're terrified sometimes of somebody really knowing us. And we think, if somebody really knew what I was thinking, if somebody really knew what I've done, if somebody really knew how rude and cruel I've been, if somebody knew how much I've lusted, if somebody knew how much I've lied, if somebody knew what I've done and what I've said and how I've thought, nobody would love me. Jesus knew every one of the sins that these men had committed, that they were committing, and that they would commit in the future. And he loved them anyway. He pulled off their sandals. He washed their feet. And if you had been there that night, in spite of what you've done, in spite of what you've thought, in spite of what you will do, he would pull off your shoe and he'd peel off your dirty, sweaty sock and he would wash your feet. Do you know why? Because he loves you. He loves you. And love is something more than something we feel. Jesus loves you. He loves you more than you can possibly imagine. He knows you better than anyone else knows you. In fact, he knows you better than you know yourself. He knows every thought you've ever had and every thought you will have. He knows every word you've said and every word you will say. And he loves you. And this is what he does for his disciples, the men who haven't been perfect, who've been messed up and haven't really got it up to this point and still wouldn't get it, and the people that were fighting with each other and that would betray him, and he loves them. He loves them with his deeds. He loves them, and he gets down on the floor, wraps a towel around his waist, and washes their dirty feet. Verse 6, he came to Simon Peter, and Peter said to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? Jesus answered him, what I'm doing you do not understand now, but afterward you will understand. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. And this is the worst job. This is a job, Messiahs don't do this. Even just a normal rabbi doesn't do this. Even just a normal person doesn't do this. Even a servant doesn't want to do this. This is a job for the lowest of the low of the low. Nobody wants to wash other people's feet. And here is Jesus. Jesus, who's not a slave. Jesus, who's a rabbi, a teacher. Jesus, who these men believe is the Messiah. He's the Christ. We know he's God in the flesh. He's God. He's God. And he's wrapped a towel around his waist. And he's washing their dirty feet. And Peter feels the way you would probably feel, the way I would feel, ashamed, embarrassed. How could you wash my feet? And Jesus said to him, if I don't wash you, you have no share with me. And so Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Wash all of me. If this is what it takes for me to have part with you, then I want to be washed completely. Verse 10, Jesus said to him, the one who has bathed does not need to wash except for his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not every one of you. For he knew who was to betray him. That was why he said, not all of you are clean. He knew what Judas was going to do. He knew what Judas was going to do. In fact, Judas was probably sitting right beside Jesus at that supper. And Jesus washed Judas's feet. Not necessarily because he had a warm, fuzzy feeling in his heart towards Judas, but because he loved him. He served him. He wrapped a towel around his waist and got down on the floor and washed the dirty, smelly feet of the men who would run away from him and deny him and betray him. Now, I want you to imagine the people in your life that are hard to love. The people in your life who have betrayed you. Imagine if you knew that someone had plans to hurt you. If you knew that someone was out to get you. If you knew that somebody had already made a scheme to betray you. How hard would it be to love someone like that? And that's exactly what Jesus did. He loved people like that because, again, love is something we, more than something we
feel.
Verse 12, when he had washed their feet and put on his outer garments and resumed his place, he said to them, do you understand what I've done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an what? Example. A what? Example. I've given you an example that you also should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Jesus says, if I'm the Lord, and I'm the master, and I'm your teacher, and I did this for you, then none of you can ever say again, I'm too good to do that. Never again. Can you say, that would be embarrassing? That would be humiliating. I can't do that. I know I probably should do that. I know I should love them. I know I should help them. I know I should serve them, but that would be so embarrassing. Or don't you know what they did to me? In doing what Jesus did that night, he took that excuse away from all of us, didn't he? He loved you. He would wash your feet. And then he says, now you go and do that for one another. Now guys, listen, what would that look like? Like in practical terms, what would that look like? I'm not telling you to go pull each other's shoes off and wash each other's feet. That actually might be easier than what you need to do. What would it look like? What would it look like to completely humble yourself? What would it look like to become the servant of others? What would it look like to really love one another like Jesus has loved you? Yeah, even the people that are hard to love. Even the people that have stabbed you in the back. Even the people that have ignored you. Even the people that have talked badly about you. Even the people that other people don't hang out with. And you feel like it might be embarrassing to hang out with those people. Jesus humiliated himself in front of his disciples. Washed their feet even though he knew what they had done and what they would do. So what would it look like? What would it look like for you to love your sibling? What would it look like for you to love your annoying cousin? What would it look like for you to love the people at school? Or what would it look like for you to love your neighbor? What would it look like for you to love the other people in your youth group? I don't mean necessarily how you feel in your heart towards them. I want you to have a warm, fuzzy feeling in your heart towards them. That's great. But what's even better is if you serve them. If you do good to them. Even when they don't deserve it. Even when it's embarrassing. Even when it's hard. Why? Because that's what Jesus did for you. Verse 17. If you know these things, Jesus says, blessed are you if you, last two words, what are they? Do them. Because love is something more than something we
Feel.
Blessed are you if you do them. Do you know what the word blessed means? It means happy. It means to kind of have a life that other people envy. I want you to think about that for a second. What sort of life do other people envy? What's the best life? The life that this is the life, you know? We even say that, don't we? We say this is the life. What's the life? What's the blessed life? What's the happy life? What's the best possible life? Jesus says, in spite of what else anyone else says, here's what Jesus says. It's this. It's washing other people's feet. It's serving people. It's loving people. It's doing good to people. Even people who have treated you poorly. Even people that have ignored you. Even people who have betrayed you. It's loving them. It's doing good for them. This is the blessed life. Jesus says, you will be blessed if you do them. Not just if you believe them. Not if you feel them. Not if you think about them. But if you do them. So do it. Do it. Believe that Jesus really loves you this way. And then go and love others this way. In fact, later on in the same chapter, verse 34, here's what Jesus says. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. By this will all people know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. The Gospel of John is super simple. Matthew is a much more complicated gospel account. If you read Matthew, Jesus has all kinds of commands. He preaches all kinds of long sermons. In the book of John, John narrows it down to two. Two things Jesus tells his followers to do in the book of John. Believe in me and love one another as I have loved you. That's it. Love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. Believe in Jesus and love each other the way Jesus has loved you. That's it. That's what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus. And Jesus says, it's this, that you wrap a towel around your waist and you get down on the floor and you wash each other's feet and you serve each other and you humiliate yourself for each other. And you love the people that don't love you back, and you're kind to the people that aren't kind to you, and you turn the other cheek, and you go the extra mile, and you love people the way I have loved you. And when people see that, they're going to say, those must be Christian people. Those must be Jesus people. This is it. This is how we turn the world upside down. This is how we turn the world upside down. This is how your world, first of all, this is how your world gets turned upside down. Because you allow Jesus to love you like this. You let Jesus know you. And you let Jesus wash you. And you let Jesus love you. You let Jesus give his life for you. And then you go do that for other people. That's how your world gets turned upside down, and then that's how you become part of turning the world upside down. Because you're part of a 2,000-year tradition of turning the world upside down. The whole world is different today than it was 2,000 years ago because of people just like you who allowed Jesus to love them, who believed in Jesus and loved others the way Jesus loved them. I love this quote. Aristides, 2nd century Christian, here's what he said. He's talking about Christians, and he said, if there is any among them, any that is poor and needy, and if they have no spare food, so imagine that. Let's say that there's a group of Christians 2,000 years ago, and somebody's hungry. Somebody in our group is hungry, and everybody says, all I have is the food I need. I don't have any extra food. So here's what they do. They fast for 2 or 3 days in order to supply to the needy their lack of food. That's what it looks like to wash feet. That's what it looks like to wash feet. It's to take what you have and sacrifice it for someone else. Can you imagine saying, listen, I don't have any extra food right now, but wait 2 days and I'll give you 2 days worth of food. Because I won't eat anything for the next 2 days so that you can have food. That's how we love one another the way Jesus has loved us. And make no mistake, Jesus has loved you like that. Jesus not only would wash your feet, he died for you. He knows you. He knows everything you've done. You're not hiding anything from him. He knows it all. Everything you've thought, everything you've said, everything you've done, everyone you've been with, he knows all of that. And for your sake, he let people nail him to a cross. And he died because he loves you. But it can't stop there. You have to take that love and show that love to others. This is what turns the world upside down. The love of Jesus turns the world upside down. The love of Jesus turns the world upside down. The message of the love of Jesus turns the world upside down, and then embodying that love turns the world upside down. And it's been doing that for 2,000 years. Here we are, on the other side of the world. All these things happened 2,000 years ago on the other side of the world. And here we are, 800 people in Louisville, Texas, gathered together talking about this, talking about Jesus. Why? Because we heard the message of the love of Jesus, and we've seen it in his people. His people have loved us like that, haven't they? Maybe your parents, maybe your grandparents, maybe your friends, maybe your youth group. Now it's your turn to believe this truth about Jesus and then to embody it, because the love of Jesus turns the world upside down. And maybe it needs to start with you. Maybe tonight is the night where you begin that journey with Jesus. Maybe you haven't been baptized into Christ yet, and you're ready to allow him to cleanse you, to forgive you. He knows everything you've done and everywhere you've been and everything you've thought, and he loves you. And he wants you to experience his love forever. But then he wants us all to come up out of the baptism, up out of the waters of baptism, and to go on and to love one another as he has loved us. And through that love, to turn the world upside down. So guys, I don't know where you are in that journey tonight. Maybe you need to be baptized. Maybe you're just going through some things and you need people to pray with you, and you need to experience the love of Jesus' people. And you need to allow us to help you bear your burdens. Or maybe you just need to recommit yourself to going and loving people the way Jesus has loved you. Washing feet, feeding hungry people, forgiving the people that have hurt you, being kind, sharing your time, sharing your life with people, loving them because Jesus has loved you. And if we can help you with any of those things, now's a great opportunity to come forward. Together we stand and sing this.